Before we start with the music, just introduce yourself.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Fab 5 Freddy here live and direct with the track star situation. It's about to go down.
You have some of the most amazing stories of anyone in the history of music ever.
Yeah.
The people that you've met, all these different situations in culture, especially here in New York City, that you were there for firsthand. I want to get into all of that stuff.
Let's get to it.
All right, so first, I want to go back to like childhood.
Wow, takes my breath away. Well, this is the soundtrack of my childhood, a whole lot of this. So this is Thelonious Monk composition, Around Midnight, a jazz classic, a jazz standard, re-recorded by all the best that ever did it. Great song, especially sounding coming through here. It's like the acoustics are perfecto. It's like better than earbuds, guys. This is it.
So tell me about like your house growing up, music in your household. What?
Well, my dad grew up deep loving the music, growing up in Brooklyn, watching jazz evolve from the swing, big band era. You know, I've heard lots of that. And then as they became young men, this new radical, innovative style of jazz developed called bebop. And my dad's childhood friend, who was also my godfather, Max Roach, one of the pioneer guys in bebop of that new form, along with Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk, Dizzy Gillespie. All of those guys were like young cats that wanted to do it a different way. And that became this huge thing. And my dad was like, that was the stuff that he grew up with. So I, as a young child with my dad and his friends, there were countless stories, playing this music all the time, and it just eventually got into my DNA. And I talk in the book about really loving Thelonious Monk, the seemingly simplistic way he plays the piano, yet at the same time he's extremely complex in this really simple way. And he became and still is my favorite musician. And I think I went through my dad's phone book and saw his number and was like, yo, I'm gonna call this guy. There's the old rotary dial phones, you know, and had a nice conversation with his wife, Nellie. And yeah. So it's a part of my memoirs, telling all these cool stories, I guess.
You also tried to call the Beatles, right?
I did try to call the Beatles. And I was like, why not? And as a little boy, and I guess I was so persistent and I was so focused on connecting with them. It was a bit harder to get to the Beatles than it was. At least I got to Monk's wife.
Yeah.
But with the Beatles, I would end up getting switched to an international operator with an English accent. So they must have been, oh, we got this cute kid calling, you know. But I was really determined to talk to those guys. So it didn't happen, but, you know. I was a fan, Beatle fan. It was a cartoon. I was kind of missed the early Ed Sullivan stuff. You'd see that later. But the Beatles cartoon.
Look, George, a merry-go-round. Come on, let's hop aboard.
Better wait until it stops, Ringo.
Oh, don't be such a...
It was a Saturday morning cartoon, and I think an aunt had got me a bunch of little small Beatle dolls with it was just the coolest stuff ever.
What about your relationship with Max and having a figure like that just around your life? Like, was that just like your uncle, or was that like a guy that
it was
musically
sort of like an uncle, technically a godfather, but you know, it's like Uncle Max or whatever. But it was like an excitement because my dad and his friends would mention Max often, just in talking about the music, hearing his music. Oh, that's Max. That's one of the things that first got me really fascinated about in music is how they were able to know different musicians just from the sound of these instruments. And I was like, how do they know that's not this one, but it's that one? It's Sonny Rollins and not Dexter Gordon or whoever it may be. And then I remember it was with Monk and his particular sound that I first was like, that's Monk on piano. And then you'd hear it and I'd be, that's Monk. And then at the end of the song on the radio or whatever, the radio announcer, I think that was Thelonious Monk's whatever. I was like, yo, I got it. So you understand, you're learning how to do that, become familiar with what a specific musician does. And so Max Roach was around a lot. My dad, hear him, he'd come and visit, just the coolest guy. And there was always excitement around him visiting. Oh, Max is coming over. Max going to be over later. I could hear my parents were always excited about it. Then he was just so cool, so loving, hanging out, laughing, being cool to everybody. So that was just a great guy. And then you realize, oh my God, there's Max Roach. He's on albums. I see him in magazines. Ebony magazine, when you're a kid in a black home. It's like Ebony or Jet. Those are the two main magazines.
Yeah, I can imagine that it like also just makes you realize it's there. It's accessible. Like that world isn't that far away. Especially growing up,
so
in Brooklyn, you're here. You're right. You're so close to where this stuff is happening. You're like, oh, I could be a part of that world.
That did play an effect a bit later. When I began to try to step out into that zone, I was really little. My mom, I thought I wanted to, Max gave me a practice drum set, if you will, which I went to drum lessons for a hot minute. That wasn't for me. So, but the influence of him, his character, his just nice guy sense of really of cool, and then being this incredible musician was just very, very humbling.
Something happens in the 1970s where there's all these new musical styles that arise. Like dance music, disco, funk is coming in, hip hop is starting to come on, punk rock is starting to happen, and you're exposed to all these different styles of music all at once. And I feel like you're seeing this intersection.
Well, yeah. I guess thankfully I was open to all different types of music, which probably begins with listening to the Beatles. Music, unfortunately, was very segregated.
Yeah.
This is a reflection of a lot of America. So you had radio stations that played this and radio stations that played that. My aunt, who I talk about, my mother's younger sister, lived in Sheepshead Bay, kind of a diverse area at that time. She would have on these stations that played the Beach Boys and the Ronettes. So I always remember those trips to go visit my grandmother out in Sheepshead Bay. A part of that experience for me was listening to that kind of music, because my aunt, she was into the black stations, but she would listen to these other white pop stations, WMCA. That was a station I remember. And they would play all this other stuff. And so that got in my DNA as well. Like the Beach Boys and the Monkees.
Yeah.
That sets it up for me at a time in the 70s when I'm trying to figure out being an artist, being a creative. This punk rock thing starts to hit the newspapers, and the articles are like, this is the end of Western civilization. Look what they're doing. And they're talking about God Save the Queen, and this is Sex Pistols, and this whole new punk rock energy. It was incredibly exciting to read about it, and I was curious because I'm also trying to figure out people I can communicate with about my ideas about this kind of art that I'm trying to position, if you will, for myself as an artist and for a possible scene, if you will. And so that led me to really explore what this punk rock stuff was all about. So I went to CBGB's early on, 78, got to see and experience that punk rock energy, which was wild and kind of scary.
All right, so since you brought up the punk rock thing.
Oh, shit. Man, I love this record. Goodness gracious. The Clash, the Magnificent Seven. And then there was a remix of this that a DJ I loved played a hell of a lot on WBLS, and he added in the sound of Clint Eastwood.
This is the 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world. And it could blow your head clean off. Do you feel lucky?
The 44 Magnum is the most powerful handgun in the world. It was so cool during this song, just grooving along. They played it on BLS, and then clubs got a copy of that, and they would play it. Huge record, and I became good friends with The Clash when they came to New York and ended up spending some time here. Really wanted to check out the scene that we were a part of, the hip hop, the early rap stuff. They were really into that. Man, those guys were super into that whole energy, and this record got played a lot on WBLS, which was the major black station on FM.
It has a groove. Like, you could dance to that song anywhere. So it's not a surprise. Like, it doesn't feel like, oh, I gotta rock, like I'm an anarchist. It makes you feel like it's a groove.
Yeah, the Clash were great. They really, and other groups at that time wanted to experiment with other flavors and styles without really compromising like who they were. Like, in an incredible way, like they made it work with their style that they'd already been doing. Like, London Calling is my favorite Clash song.
London calling to the faraway towns. Now war is declared and battle come down.
It caught a lot of the energy of that era, and things happening in London. There had been like demonstrations in the streets, and it was like almost a rallying cry for the people, like London, which they took it from a BBC radio program. In fact, they'd be like, London Calling. So it was like a thing well known in England. I would later learn, not that I grew up in England, but no, that band was super dope, man. Hanging out with those guys was special.
When did you meet them?
They came to New York in the early 80s, and so they were kind of aware of the connection I had made with the group called Blondie that had a really big hit that I kind of inspired. It was the first rap song to be #1 on the pop chart, or the first song with rap in it. And that's that beat right there. That's that Rapture beat.
Let's just take a second.
God. Okay. Oh, man, here we go.
Freddy told me everybody slide.
I'm like blown away. They shout me out on the record. All this stuff I'm talking, Flash is fast, Flash is cool. I totally think they were just goofing around in the studio and added this as a little special groove throwaway thing just to show me like all this stuff I told them they really got. They never said, we're going to try to make a rap record, Fab. We want your opinion on, how this sounds. Is it legit? Whatever. So I'm totally thinking like, oh, they just played around, and on the groove part, they just played around and threw this rap on. And that's what I thought. And I was just so moved, so happy. You guys are the coolest. Boom. That was it. I left. Not more than a month or two later, I happened to be in Paris for the first time. And I'm hanging out with two members of the Talking Heads that had also formed a little offshoot group called the Tom Tom Club. And so they were dropping shit that was super funky. So it was Chris and Tina, which were the two members of Talking Heads that were in the Tom Tom Club. We were sharing a cab going to a restaurant, and we get in the cab, we're driving through Paris. My first time in Paris, by the way, I'm still blown away. I hear this song with the rap, and I go, this is crazy. How does this cab driver get a copy of this song? I don't know this is a real record. And Chris goes, Freddy, that's the new single from Blondie. I kind of should have known, but I didn't. And so this is how I realized, oh my God, this is a real record. I always thought it was just a goof. And it goes on to become a #1 song, which is, can't make it up.
To set the stage, at the time, Blondie's massive already, right? This is like,
huge.
They're not a small New York band. They're already a huge.
Global
They've
band.
had multiple hit songs.
Yes.
And the idea of rapping on a song is like, there's very few records. It's not being played on TV.
Totally.
Like, people aren't rapping in the mainstream at all.
That's
and
right.
The biggest band in the world does this, and they rap about you.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then it goes #1.
Right. And so the wild part about being mentioned, all of that, I'm still in the downtown underground New York scene of artists, painters, filmmakers and stuff. It's a relatively small group of us, not more than 500 people. Somebody actually roughly calculated. People in the scene, the world I was moving around, this is obviously way pre-internet, pre-all that stuff. Those people knew, and that was it.
Yeah.
It really wasn't until late 80s when I would get asked to host Yo MTV Raps.
Yo, MTV Raps.
Yo.
This Saturday on Yo MTV Raps, I'm hanging out with LL Cool J. I'm gonna show you his brand new video, I'm That Type of Guy, plus videos by Slick Rick and De La Soul.
And then the press and the word around that was like, yo, who is this guy? Oh, in one of the first videos MTV got to play, Rapture, he's the guy Debbie mentions. He's also in the video back there doing some graffiti painting with Lee Quinones. And so that kind of really fills in that piece of the puzzle, like who the guy really is.
So let's go back to you first become aware of like the rise of like hip hop.
Yeah.
And I think what's often misunderstood, because hip hop now is so much like just about the songs.
Yeah.
But when hip hop first started, it was equally about the art, equally about the dancing, equally about the parties, right? It wasn't just about like, it wasn't even about making records. It was about like everything else that went around it. Is that right?
It's right. But what's also right is this was this idea I had. I had this exact idea to connect these elements as one complete culture coming from these kids in New York. And it was based on something that I saw in some of my father's articles in his man cave basement where he'd hang out with his other jazz buddies and think and talk about everything. That I saw this article, this guy, his name was Albert Murray. He was like a thought-leading, cultural, sociological kind of whatever. And in this article, the quote from him was, "For a culture to be complete, it should have a music, a form of dance, and a form of visual art." And what I was initially looking to do was figure out a way for myself, having done graffiti, to take that form and get exposure into galleries and get in front of collectors, people that understand art, to look at us in a different light. I thought it would be more impactful if we can show that it was not just is there this music, but here's this form of dance. Music, visual art, dance. Hip hop, which becomes hip hop culture. And so that was the idea. I had to present this to people. Once I connected with people like Chris and Debbie, I was like, and there was an underground film scene as well in New York with underground filmmakers very connected with these bands. Debbie had been in a couple of these movies, and I met these directors. Charlie Ahern, who I worked with on the movie Wild Style, was from that little scene of these underground filmmakers. And so the idea was to make a movie that painted that picture. That movie is Wild Style. And that kind of embeds that concept that this is a complete culture, which it kind of worked out nicely.
So you're from Brooklyn.
Yeah, I'm from Brooklyn, Bedford-Stuyvesant section.
It's starting in the Bronx. Brooklyn and the Bronx is kind of far away. Like you have to go up there and discover this world.
Yeah, the nucleus of this stuff really came out of the Bronx, which was the most bombed out, well, parts of the Bronx were, particularly the South Bronx. It was literally looked like bombs had been dropped on certain areas. So people just created something unique, and a lot of the energy, particularly for the music, came out of the Bronx, what became hip hop. But the graffiti thing was citywide.
Yeah.
You know, so it was like every area that had young kids, every ethnicity, every background. Like the kid that really set it all off was a Greek kid, Taki 183 from Upper Washington Heights. 183 was the street he was from. And there was mad kids up there, white kids, Greek kids, all different ethnicities that was doing it. And then once they started doing it on the trains, it's going to other parts of the city. Other kids is curious, like, yo, who is that guy? How did he do that? I want to do that too. So it was a thing going on through the 70s. But I saw a connection between the rambunctious, rebellious nature of that and the way the music was put together as well. And the breakdancing had faded a little bit, but when we decided in the making of the movie to put breaking back in the mix, that re-energized the scene. Because guys had done the breaking thing and they was moving on, young cats doing it. So that helped ignite a lot of other people's interests from the community, people close that didn't understand, because we were getting a really bad look, which was the thing that also motivated me in the press, especially young Black and Latin kids. It's kind of always a negative depiction in the press. And I'm like, everybody's not like that. So let me give you another picture of who we are and the things that we do. And that became Wild Style in a great way. It's a very interesting, diverse cast of real players. That was the other concept, is the graffiti artists, the rappers, the dancers would all be played by the actual people doing roles close to who they already were.
So this is how you get your name, from graffiti.
Yeah, because I was a part of a crew called the Fabulous Five. Like I hooked up with Lee Quinones, who was the most incredible graffiti painter, artist, writer in New York City, about these ideas I had. Like looking at the work of Andy Warhol and
tell me about the Campbell's soup cans.
So I was a kid that was doing all kind of wild, crazy shit in the hood growing up in Bed-Stuy. I was also into museums, cutting school, going to the Metropolitan, the Museum of Modern Art, like just doing stuff that was a bit more interesting than being in class all the time. I don't recommend that to kids or your kids. Don't do that, kids. But no, I went on adventures.
Every once in a while, it's okay to cut class to go to a
That's good
museum.
way.
Every once in a while.
Every once in a while. That's perfect. That's a great way. I'm going to be saying that from now on. Every once in a while, cut school. Nah, that was just some wild shit I did and went on adventures, man. And it just got me familiar with certain painters. I was like, wait, I seen that. I stood in front of that painting, whether it was from a Caravaggio, something from the Renaissance, or a Lichtenstein or a Jackson Pollock. Like, oh, wait, and then you read more about those guys. And then it clicked, particularly that pop artists have been inspired by a lot of the stuff that graffiti had evolved into, illustrating the name, really bright, bold, color, three-dimensional letters, cartoon characters, it's just all this stuff started hitting the trains and people learning how to make these images. And I'm like, wow, this is very similar to things that inspired pop artists. What a great connection to make for people that understand art that haven't looked at it like that. And so that was my mission, to set up a space for myself as a painter and other homies from around the way. And so Jean-Michel and I met Jean-Michel Basquiat at the same time I'm hitting the scene. He's got similar ideas. And like me, he used to go to museums a lot as a kid. So now I got a cat that's my age that also knows about all these artists that we could talk about. And Keith Haring shows up around the same time. And all of us hanging out, trying to figure out how to make shit happen while having a good time.
There's a lot. You're making me think of so many stories. Let me play a song, and then I want to come back to that because I want you to tell the story about the Canal Zone.
Canal Zone, yeah.
And the party where Samo reveals himself.
That's where Jean makes his debut, kind of, sort of. Mardi Gras, Bob James.
Come on.
This is the stuff that when I first would go to these mobile disco DJ parties in Brooklyn, just as before hip hop is hip hop, I remember a DJ putting on a beat like that, and the vibe in the party just shifted. This is outdoor parties where DJs would hook up their sound systems. This is the beginning of it all.
To the light post.
Yes, you bust open the bottom of the light
somewhere.
Yeah, you bust open the bottom of the light post, but you really got to know what Y is. Because people would say,
there used to be a dude on our block who sometimes would watch TV outside.
Yo,
he'd be watching the football game. Yeah, I would be like, "What's the score?"
That was some real hood shit back in the day. I remember some people whose lights would get cut off. They would have that thing out of that box. They'd have that tape
everything, the whole
up
house.
The pole, and then the wire into the house. And so, boom. So if you know what Y is to splice into, you got it. Hardcore, raw power from the city. And that was so key to how a lot of this all developed. The DJs would come out into parks and do that and play for 400 or 500 people in a park, and when kids had nothing to do.
Yeah.
But at one of those jams where they were mostly playing the funk and disco and stuff like that, they'd play something different, like Bob James Mardi Gras. And I went up to a DJ one time and I was like, dude, what is that? And he said, that's the Uptown sound. And I didn't know Uptown, Bronx, Manhattan, but I went on a quest to find that sound, and I did find it, and I go deep into that in the book, as you know.
Okay, so we backtracked. I wanted to talk about the Uptown sound. Now bring us back to the Canal Zone party that we were talking about.
Okay, so
and by the way, this block right down the street was Basquiat's studio, right down here. This was the Warhol spot.
57 Great Jones, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right here.
I'm well aware. Listen, I've never gone. There's a whole nother thing in that building now, which I get, and life goes on and whatever, but it's not. It's something very sacred for me because we hung out in that place. So it's at the same time, it's a celebration of the continued success of what Jean-Michel did and many of us in those times. But it's also sad that he's not here. And it's heavy for me that there's so much appreciation, so much love, so much awareness. I drop a lot of jewels as a close friend. Most of the people writing about Jean are just art scholars and, pop culture, academics or what have you. But So anyway, it's special. But yes, I'm feeling the spirit. This is the block. We hung out right up there at his crib a whole lot and had a good time. Yeah, it was Warhol's building, and Jean kind of rented it from him, if I understand.
So his tag, the Samo tag, was popping up all over the city.
Yeah,
You're taking notice of this.
Yeah, so
before you even knew him.
Correct. So at that time, downtown New York, you would see these Samo, the word Samo with a copyright symbol, and this little statement, if you will, sometimes with a poetic feel. And it was like, they're very thought-provoking little phrases that would get put up. And you would notice them. It was graffiti, not the way everybody else had a little flavor, flair, their name, the way they wrote it. It was very plain, easily readable, and people were curious, like, what is this Samo? Who is this? Is this a movement? Is this some conceptual artist? Nobody knew. So I had met this English artist with a big loft, a guy named Michael Holman, who became a longtime friend, a very important cat in the whole culture game, was connected with this guy. He had a big loft, and some of our first press we get is a write-up in the Village Voice, which was the cultural newspaper at that time. And it was about us as artists doing this work, getting a little word out there. I'm standing in front of one of Lee's walls and people can see the work. And there was my home number to call if you want to hire us to come and do a mural. And so people began to call. And one of the people was this English guy, and Michael Holman invited me and Lee to come to this big loft. And we started making paintings in the loft on giant sheets of plastic. He was blown away. He wanted to set up this whole Canal Zone movement, business, if you will. So the kickoff was this big party calling Canal Zone, introducing it. So this is my first New York downtown scene art party. All these cool people are there, cool music playing. We've got these big graffiti paintings. And this guy shows up, a young black guy with a crazy blonde mohawk, wild hairdo, a Gumby t-shirt. It was really crazy. And he saw us, there was some tagging had been happening. He said, yo, let me do something. And he writes this Samo phrase, like a multiple choice question, and signs it with the Samo. And everybody was like, that's you, you're Samo? He's like, yeah. So we meet, become immediate friends. Michael Holman and him form a band together called Gras. And the guy who owns the loft invites us to hang out there and make art. And so that's how we really bond. And we're both trying to do similar stuff. And we're both in the mix and trying to make it happen.
So in this era, you're really focused on art, on visual art.
The visual art is my main thing, but I also am trying to create a space where people would look at what I'm doing and understand where I'm from. So to do that is to make this movie.
Yeah.
That's an ongoing dream I have. So as I'm meeting all these different people, this is another plan I have, is to get this film made. And that begins to happen. It all was so interconnected. Like I meet Charlie Ahern, who was this underground New York filmmaker, at a huge art show called the Times Square Show. Mm-hmm. Where I meet Keith Haring as well, and Jean-Michel was in that show. So all these underground downtown New York artists, many are in this big show. And I meet Charlie and I pitch him this idea of this movie showing graffiti and this breakdancing. And Charlie knows about graffiti and he's seen Lee's work. He doesn't know, nobody knows about this other stuff. And Charlie says, yo, this sounds interesting. So we literally start meeting and planning and going on expeditions to the Bronx. Now I'm really getting to connect with the core of the culture now. I'm from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
A lot of people think I'm from the Bronx because I ended up being one of the actors. That was never the plan to be in the movie, by the way. It was just to be a behind-the-scenes guy with the ideas, producing. I would later learn to direct. But Wild Style turned out to be my film school. So I learned, because we were like super-duper underground, low-budget filmmaking and shooting in the Bronx, you know. I mean, our crew was so raw and austere that the police never even stopped it. We used to think, man, the cops are going to ask us for our permits. They were like, these guys are jokes. I remember reading in some like underground filmmaking book, they said, if you're shooting and you don't have the permits and stuff, wear NYU t-shirts and tell them, oh, we're film students at NYU.
That's the oldest trick in the book. I still do that. I'm like, oh, I'm a student.
Up in the Bronx back then, police didn't give a damn. Like, fuck them. They didn't care. I was like, man, nobody even asked us if we had permits. Yeah. We shoot the whole big finale scene in the movie, which was a couple of thousand kids. This is the big culminating concert. And we have been meeting with the city, trying to get permission. We're going to come in and paint that place, that amphitheater had been abandoned for decades. It was built during the Depression for people in the community to have this like theater type amphitheater thing. The city let it rot. And we were meeting. We never got permits. We just went and did it ourselves. We fixed the joint up, painted it. And Lee's mural was on that building forever. They just tore it all down for whatever reason not long ago. But yeah, so that was real underground filmmaking at that time. It was real renegade stuff, man. We just went and did it.
What do you think it was about New York City at this time that there was so much like bubbling up? Like so many people needed to express themselves. You need to express yourself, but countless people that you interact with, whether it was in music, in art, in all these different, and maybe it was also more affordable. Maybe it was that like
big point.
Places were stripped down. And
I always point out, particularly why so much of this was emanating from the East Village in terms of the arts and the creative. It was affordable, extremely affordable comparatively. You could have an apartment, and of course, inflation, everything's changed. We're talking 40 years ago, literally. But you could live affordably, and if your rent was more than $500 a month, that was like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, there were many people that had $150, $200, $300 apartments, small funky joints in tenement buildings. Sometimes your bathroom tub doubled as your kitchen sink.
Yeah.
It was some other shit built for immigrants. It was crazy. I love the way this dude laughs.
David Byrne, we were talking to David Byrne, and I was asking him about this. And he lived right here. I lived on Bond Street.
Yo, listen.
And he was like, oh, it was $150 a month or something.
It's crazy. I remember when I got my first apartment, I'm paying about $350. I thought I was getting robbed, but I'm in a building that had no heat. So it was like, I'm like, fuck, man. I wanted my own apartment so bad. I mean, we'd have that oven on in the winter. They eventually got the heat fixed, but that was the thing. The landlord said, look, the boiler's broke. It's going to be a minute. So I'll give it to you for, $375. And that was why I agreed to be in Wild Style, because I wasn't trying to be on camera at all. But Charlie, we had cast everybody in the film. This one character who's a connection between the graffiti scene and the hip hop scene. We couldn't get this. We wanted this actual guy that was really a graffiti legend named Phase 2, who then we found was connected to the hip hop scene, making a lot of the flyers. Yeah. This was a crazy idea in my head, but to find a piece that really legitimized my idea, he was perfectly it. A serious giant in the first wave of graffiti, grew up in the Bronx, and he started designing flyers for one of the clubs. So anyway, he wasn't going to do it. And so Charlie talks me in, basically. He was like, Fred, I'm like, no way. And then when I realized that if I make a few $100 extra, I calculated, man, I'd be able to afford an apartment, which I did.
So that was one of your first experiences with film. Kind of, you called it your film school.
Yeah.
You also had a little bit of experience with this TV show.
Well, yeah, that's right. Glenn O'Brien's TV Party. It was a public access TV show.
Are you high right now?
Are we what?
Are you high right now?
Are you? How many beers have you drunk tonight?
No, I am not high.
Are you mad because there's no football on?
I guess when cable started, a part of what they had to do was give some community access to to some time slots. So you went in there, you'd fill out something, you'd get your own TV show, you'd have to give them about $30-$40, and you got to broadcast to whoever was. The thing was, most of New York City wasn't wired yet. Yeah. So Manhattan was wired, but only up to like maybe 110th Street or something. It was crazy. But cable was this thing you'd hear about. You'd be like, oh, like it's new and you can curse. You see movies, they don't cut cursing, a little nudity. The picture's clear all the time. It's like, what the fuck is that all about? Like, I didn't know anybody that had it, but I'd heard about it. And so when I meet Glenn O'Brien, which was a very important piece in my whole development, I was a fan of a column he used to write in Andy Warhol's Interview magazine, and he'd write about all kind of music I was into, and I was very curious. At the time I was in college, and me and a buddy were hosting a college radio show like it was a reggae show, and I just me reach out to this guy. Maybe he'll come and give me an interview, which he did. And then I was telling him these ideas I had of graffiti as art, this new music. I see there's a whole scene that I thought was connected to the energy of new wave and punk rock, the rebelliousness. He totally said, man, I like everything I'm hearing. He says, in a couple of months, I'm going to do this public access TV show. And I said, shit. You know, and then he invites me to come on and be a guest of the first episode of the first shooting. And then he also asked me to jump on the camera, which I was like, yeah, man that camera. So I became like a cameraman. It was so rinky-dink.
Freddy's doing camera and he's rapping the news. Director Amos Poe likes shots of shoes. Glenn is the man who is the host. He doesn't boast, he just talks the most.
The cameras and the whole studio, it looked like it was from a 50s sci-fi like B-movie going to Plan 9 from outer space.
Like this.
Oh no, this is the slicker, more modern version. But it was
inspired by that though.
Yeah, inspired by a more modern version. But I was like, yo, this is real TV. Like people are really gonna watch us live. Yeah. And Chris Stein, that's how I meet Chris. He's the co-host along with Glenn O'Brien, who writes the column. And they knew the cream of the crop of the downtown scene would be in the audience and be guests on the show. So I get to meet all these people. From the show, we started going to a new club that had just opened called the Mud Club. So I get really dialed into the scene, all these ideas, I'm sharing it with these people. They're very responsive, helpful, mentoring, support. Like I'm making art. Chris and Debbie from Blondie buy my work. They buy work from Jean-Michel. We're just trying to figure it out. So it was a special time of sensibility. And I think to answer the question you brought up, a lot of us as younger kids were kids in the 60s. We were young in the 60s. So I was very attuned to what was going on, the protests, the upheavals against the system. But also when you dig in, like Andy Warhol was helping make like what was going on really cool. There was a lot of interesting stuff happening, music, you know, Jimi Hendrix. I mean, it was a wild scene. And I think that influenced all the people from my generation, artists at that time, were aware of that and wanted to do kind of like our own version, if you will, like having fun and making art and doing cool shit like they did then seemed like the only way to do it, as opposed to just being boring and lame. And, you know, so we wanted to do all that, and that was what we tried to do.
Why did you and Chris become such like almost kindred spirits, or like you connected because you did a bunch of stuff together? It seems like.
You know, we're kind of like-minded, if you will. Chris was from Brooklyn, and when I'm telling them, people that were cool and sort of, there was something in graffiti, like once it got colorful, Chris was like, yo, I love that stuff, yo. And he was into like offbeat stuff, kind of people that were counterculture, had different set of tastes that weren't mainstream. So whereas everybody, most of the city administration hated what was going on, he saw some beauty there and saw what we were trying to do. So to meet somebody that's from that scene, that's understanding this punk scene and seeing this connection, this was what I would be talking to these guys about. I think there's a connection. Once again, this is a time, no YouTube, no this, but I am explaining it, and then later I would play them audio. I would have tapes of the music. You know, the graffiti was everywhere. And they were like, wow, that's pretty cool.
And it all
so they just was
influences,
big,
it goes back and forth.
Yeah, and Chris was really, see, the interesting thing, let me tell you a funny story. So I tell you, I did these interviews for the audiobook that go a little deeper, people that are key in the story. So I'm doing this interview with Chris and Debbie. Now, Debbie is the singer, right? So she sells the songs. This is a thing about a great singer, even rappers. There's rappers that have you totally convinced. They didn't write that stuff, and 90% of the time, they didn't do the stuff that they're rapping about. It's great theater. I was talking to them about Rapture and going over like how incredible it was, the story I just told you. We're talking about this stuff. And then Debbie goes, I think I'd asked her, so tell me about how the Rapture song came about. Debbie goes, you know, they were a couple at that time. She goes something to the tune of, we were laying in bed, and then Chris just said, hey, let's make a rap song and call it Rapture. And Debbie says, wow, that's a great idea. And then Chris says he goes on that he writes the lyrics. He wrote most of it. And I was like, wait. I'm always assumed it was Debbie because she sells and sings the song. Chris said, no. I know they worked on all their songs, all the big hits together. Chris said, no, I wrote most of that. I go, wait a minute. Then it made perfect sense because even though I'd come over to the house to hang out, I'm mostly with Chris because Chris has the really great weed way before everybody can get access to the super skunk from Cali and Hawaii. Yeah. I'm like, dude, this weed, can't believe, what the fuck am I smoking? It was beyond good. So we'd be smoking. Chris has cable, so he's always sitting up in the bed. He's clicking around. I'm getting to watch cable. We're talking about everything going on, like politics, music. I'm like, this dude is so cool. Like, he's just like hanging out like me and you right now, just kicking it, talking this shit. We smoking weed and shit. Talk about the last episode of TV Party, what we got planned coming up. And that's... Anyway, so that was just how we got down. But I realized most of the stuff I'd share with Chris. So then it made sense that he's the one that like structured the whole rap. And Debbie delivered.
If you're ready for this,
look at you.
If you're ready for this, say you're ready for this. Are you ready for this?
Are you ready for this?
Are you ready for this?
We're ready for this.
What we just can't miss.
We just can't miss.
What we just can't miss.
With a beat like this. Oh man, this is so dope the way you're doing this. Wow. So that is the Funky 4 plus one more on the Sugar Hill label. What's the deal? What's the deal? That's the joint. So the joint was a popular slang word back in the days. Like if something was good, like now we say dope, which became that came from hip hop, by the way. I remember when the cats first started saying it. I couldn't believe they was using dope in a context meaning good, but it's like bad, not bad meaning bad, but bad meaning good. And so the joint, the inspiration was, jail is known as the joint. And so jail being bad, that was kind of like jail being good was the origin, which I thought I remember that term. And then they made this record called That's the Joint, just talking about their life and being cool. And so what happened was this was one of the real foundation groups on the early rap hip hop scene, but they were the only group. It was 4 guys and this girl, Sha Rock, which was her voice, her rhyme. I mean, you could probably go on YouTube now and hear live tapes from back in the days of how she would get down. They would rock the echo chamber. Crazy the way her flow was ridiculous.
Yeah. Get about the jail, stop the house and roll. With 2 DJs from the floor. Press 1 to the people out there. We want y'all to know. We are the ones with the magical show.
They were the first hip hop group playing SNL.
Yeah, so
because of Debbie Harry.
Yeah, so what happens is Debbie's going to host Saturday Night Live, Debbie Harry, and they get to pick the support band, if you will, the opening band, if you will. And they're like, well, Freddie, we love all the stuff you've been telling us. We want to use one of these rap groups. Because a big part of the conversations with Chris and them at the time, I'm totally saying, man, this scene has the potential to be as big as the new wave, punk rock, all of this stuff, but it was all still underground. And Chris wanted to figure out something we could do to help expose it because he was into it. I played him the tapes. I told him all the stuff. Debbie, they were digging it. So they said, man, we want to bring one of these groups on. Who would you recommend? I said, well, Flash and the Furious are incredible, the Cold Crush, the Fantastic Five. But there's this one group of 4 guys and a girl, which is kind of like you guys. And That's the Joint was a hot record at the time. And a few weeks later, they played on Saturday Night Live. So it's crazy. It turns out to be the first rap. But it's so wild to see these things pop up and people send me links on YouTube about, because there's a few people that know the connection that I had to it all. And I'm like, it was just amazing. Like nobody at the time had any idea this stuff would be so pervasive for so long. So I'm still amazed that this stuff is still so big and happening.
When did you become aware of MTV? And was it a force in your life at all? Like, you mean you Blondie, they had some videos on there. You saw Chris, he had cable, he was flipping through.
Well, a part of that whole MTV story, once again, back to Chris and Debbie from Blondie. Chris was, I guess this, once again, another answer to the part of the answer of how we became so close. We had a lot of similar interests. So I was always into the futurist stuff, what's coming, what's next, what's going down, as was Chris. And so Chris was like, man, there's this new technology. I think they originally were calling it Disco Vision, but it was Laserdisc, this technology that was going to be able to, and he says, in the future, this is what groups are going to do. His take on it was, groups are going to, every song is going to be a video. And they're going to, as opposed to just getting an album, you'll be able to buy this whole thing with a whole video, which I was like, wow, that's incredible. This was some new tech coming. So Chris was thinking like that, knowing this technology was coming. So he was shooting a lot of different videos for different songs on the Eat to the Beat album. And the plan was also to do that on the Auto American album, which is the album that had Rapture on it. So I'm in a few of those videos. All of our crew from TV Party and stuff, we'd be the extras hanging out with them and doing that. And it was just, wow, Chris, this is so forward thinking. This is all before MTV. Turns out, soon after, Blondie and them have this whole stack of videos that they've created. This new channel goes live showing music videos 24 hours of the day.
They needed content for it.
And they needed the content. And one of the first videos they would play is Rapture, because that was like the last, I think, really big hit. So when the idea is being pitched to them now to do a rap show several years later in '88, the producers are like trying to sell them on why we should do this. They're going, and this Rapture video, because they're pitching me, they're going, this is the guy we feel should be the host. And he's the guy that made this, had a part in what this Rapture was about. There he is in the video. So this was all part of them being sold on giving this whole thing a shot, which turns into the biggest show on the channel at the time, by the way, too. Crazy the way some of this stuff all came together.
Starts off small, like there's a lot of people that are skeptical of UMTV Raps at the beginning.
Well, you know, it's a bigger story. Unfortunately, once again, it's a reflection of the way a lot of things were structured. Race.
Yeah.
So radio was basically segregated. You had the black station, you had the pop station, which pretty much meant the white station, with very few exceptions. And that's just the ignorant way things were being programmed. And when MTV came together, these guys, when you look, it's funny, Tom Freston, who was the president of MTV, became like a really close friend of mine to this day. I look at him like a big brother.
He was just here a couple weeks ago. We were chopping it up.
That's my guy. So listen, that's my guy. Look at the back of his book. I'm one of the blurbs on the back cover. I love Tom to death. Because when I got to know him, we smoked mad weed together. And his stories about what now he shared with everybody in his book, I'm like, dude, you are the coolest. You were where you were living. Man, if I was in Afghanistan, man, the hash was crazy. I mean, his fashion line was something Kush. Yeah. I'm like, dude, that's when it became one of the hottest strains in weed. So to hear the story, I cracked up reading the book. I was like, man, this is so dope. Because he went deep in the stories in the book, and I loved it so much. But they were just figuring it out. He lays that out clearly. And he says that they like did some dumb shit. But once again, you're modeling it after what radio's doing. This is the move right now. They basically, luckily, made some radical decisions, because when these guys convinced him to put UMTV Raps on, BET wasn't trying to mess with rap either. Look, the attitude, the swagger, all of that shit, a lot of black folks that had come through struggling to get some equity in the 60s and the 70s, they wasn't trying to do that. I like to compare it to the George Jefferson moving on up.
Yeah, we're moving on up to the side.
What that show was about was, black folks can get a little something now. Yeah. You know, we are living up in the high rise and all that kind of shit with that funny ass TV show. People felt like that. So when they saw like the whole Run DMC, the attitude, all that shit, people from the hood know what that was. They're like, we're not trying to be that. And so I understood that totally then, but I knew like, yo, this is just some new shit, baby. It's time for some change. Listen, Frankie Crocker is one of my big heroes. That was a big inspiration. He was like, he wasn't trying to, so he actually eventually put Mr. Magic on the air, and that became like one of the first mainstream hip hop programs on the weekend on BLS. Because there was resistance to this whole new force coming up. And Tom Freston, MTV, took a really big chance, gave it a shot, and were rewarded with ratings
biggest
off the roof.
biggest
It's
hit
crazy. They thought the Nielsen machine shit had a glitch in it. Like, the numbers were, what? Wait, what? So they was like, yo, we ready to get busy with this. And then they wanted me to host a daily version as well, which I turned down because I just felt like I don't want to be on here. I used to see like the other VJs on MTV. You'd get so tired of looking at them because they weren't playing the shit you wanted to hear. And you'd be like, man, I don't want to be like those guys. People are like, man, I'm sick of that fucking guy, man. I gotta look at him.
You had a huge part in the creative around the show, right? Like when you got to choose. You could say, no, I don't want to play that. Let's play this instead.
Yeah, definitely had huge hands up because it became like a little crew of us. It was Peter Doherty who initiated it, Ted Demme, rest in peace. Well, sadly, both of them are looking down on us now in heaven. But Ted Demme is a nephew of Jonathan Demme, Academy Award. We became like brothers. We were super tight. Once we got it rolling, it was pretty much me and Ted.
Yeah.
And Ted knew enough. Anything coming through, make sure I checked it. Yo, what you think, Fab? It's like, oh yes. What? No. And so we was in sync on that in every way. Ted also was an inspiring filmmaker. He had directed this movie called Blow, sadly, right, and passed not long after with Johnny Depp. Really incredible movie. And so we were in sync on the creative. We tried to design the looks, the locations. We wanted to show people where the artists were at, kind of go into their environments if we could, to be able to travel to other cities for me was a treat because I was like, as the culture is now spreading, I'm like, well, what are these guys in LA really, where does their inspirations come from?
I'm expressing with my full capabilities.
And I'm living in correctional facilities.
Cause some don't agree with how I do this. I get straight and
represent like a Buddhist.
I'm dropping flavor, my behavior is hereditary. But my technique is very necessary. Blame it on Ice Cube.
Oh man, this is incredible.
Okay.
Oh my God.
So was that the first time you went to LA?
No, I had been to LA a little earlier. If you remember, later in the book, I talk about my first art show.
Yeah.
Which is around 86.
Yeah.
And I get tapped in with a bunch of guys that would later start the first big rap label, Delicious Vinyl. And so I'm told, look, those was like my brothers, those dudes that put that together. I was super tight with those cats. And the funny thing was, I was mostly in the West Hollywood area at that time. I was partying with them. Those dudes, Matt Dyke, who was the nucleus of a lot of that, incredible dude. I would crash at his crib all the time. He was also close with Jean-Michel. When Jean-Michel had went out there to show at the Gagosian Gallery, Matt Dyke was Jean-Michel's assistant, so he knew the whole flavor. So those guys just really tapped me in to the scene, and I'm moving all around, but I didn't understand what the hood gang culture. In fact, Matt had given me a studio. They had a storefront off of Crenshaw on Washington that I was going to every day to paint. And they'd be like, yo, I would meet other people later that would tell me, yo, the so-and-so Crips is in that area, whatever. I'd be like, well, it's so deceptive in LA. You don't see the guys on the street, on the corner, hanging out. So you don't understand, like, oh, this looks like this could be a heavy part of town. I should be aware. I'm just like a New Yorker. You don't see people out. There's palm trees. Even though it's the hood, It still looks way nicer than the equal area in New York City. So I was like, man, this is all good out here. This is incredible. Like LA, later I would learn what's going on. So one of those first real lessons, believe it or not, I've been to LA many times, is the first show introducing N.W.A. And the night before the shoot, Ted calls me up. He says, okay, Easy let us know. We have to be sure not to wear anything red or anything blue. So it's best to wear all black. So I was like, oh, that's weird. But anyway, okay, I got a dope black outfit. I'm gonna be fresh, no question. All right, bang. And so then we show up at the Welcome to Compton sign with N.W.A and a bunch of their crew, and this is their first time on TV. Eazy's there, Dre, Yella, you know, the DOC, who would later come out solo. So I meet everybody, Ice Cube, of course, the whole nine. Eazy, we known, we had already met Eazy. We loved Eazy. He was very close with Ted Demme. And next thing you know, a 64 Impala cruises up. And I'm chilling. So these dudes looking out the car, they checking me out. I say they kind of recognize me. So I'm like, I do what we do in New York. I just threw up the peace sign. All right, man, like that. And Cube came over to me. He said, yo, Fab, like, I know that's how the peace sign, I know what's popping in New York. He said, but listen, man, out here, you got to throw it up like this. Because you throw it up this way, it's a gang sign. I was like, a what? Now, I'm in the hood. Somebody's telling you this is how you do it. You listen. So I didn't even know a gang sign, red or blue. I didn't know none of that at the time. And so we do the show. We rented a big truck. We drive all around LA pointing out different landmarks. This is here's a swap meet where they go to shop. That was that episode, which a lot of people, that's their favorite episode, because you meet this group, which later blows all the way up, and you get to see who these guys are. And so later that night, after the taping that show, I go back to the hotel, and on my Walkman, you know, I listen to the cassette of the album, and I must snatch the headphones off like 5 times. What the fuck did he just say? Like, he said what?
Fuck the police coming straight from the underground. A young nigga got it bad cause I'm brown.
Fuck the police? Oh, he said that. Yo, what the fuck? It was so wild what they were going. Then I thought, then after listening to the album, I was like, the album is incredible. But then I go, man, this is a drag. MTV is not gonna let none of this shit air. They don't know the group is talking about this stuff, you know? But I was wrong. They had problems with the first music video, but Eazy had made a couple of videos that we played a lot.
Yeah.
We Want Eazy, some of the first stuff. There were things that we're able to play. But
It's just like
it was a wild scene.
undeniable, like the talent, just and young and hungry, and just like they're just gonna explode. So the message is almost like it's just undeniable because the music is so good that it's gonna break down the door.
That's exactly what happened in ways that's perfectly stated. Because, you know, listen, I'm like, man, I'd love to be able to share this with the world. You know, like my dad was really close to like a lot of things going on in the black community. My dad was in the room when Malcolm X was assassinated. You know, this is all in my memoir. So I knew a bit about some of the context of where this stuff was coming from. This is what my dad and Max Roach and them, they were very concerned about all these things. And I just thought, man, there's no way they're gonna let this get heard. So it was amazing to see, even though certain things like had to be edited before they can be aired. MTV was a big supporter of at that time of something that was extremely radical. And then they would get practically a cease and desist letter from the FBI.
Yeah.
What? For a creative act? They were like, yo, we want you to stop playing this music.
Yeah.
And the group was like, no, we ain't. So it became like so big at that time, like how huge a group. And then they sold like a ridiculous amount of records. So that was phenomenal to have had that connection, introducing them to the audience of the world, if you will.
It must have been so fun, like all those shoots.
A lot of them were, but it was a big surprise. Like once again, seeing, you know, it was a unique time for me, particularly coming from New York where this stuff is born, bred, and collard green fed. I'm in a New York bubble, so to speak. So as other groups and other acts from around the country are stepping into the fray, I can't predict what's going to happen, but seeing groups like them blow up the way they did in spite of getting no radio airplay, like the word of mouth, the records were running out the door. And then on the other side of that spectrum, speaking of the West Coast, having MC Hammer debut on the show, who was really like a brand new artist. And we knew he was into this dancing thing, so we set up in a dance studio to give that kind of setting. Jennifer Lopez was one of the extras we hired to be like a dancer just in the, well, when I saw her, I put her in the foreground. She was intended to be in the background. I told my man, yo, put her over here, you know? So that's why when you see her in the show, yo, Hammer, so what's going on, baby? Yeah, Freddy.
Yo, Fab Five, what's happening, baby? What's up?
Man, we chilling, man. We ready to get over to get hang out with y'all, man.
Hey, man.
And Jennifer's right there, like doing some fake dance moves, like she rehearsing in the dance studio. It was a good moment, baby. And next thing you know, I mean, she was just trying to get in the game.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at a little bio on her whole rise, and she was like, that was the moment when I knew, there I am on Yum TV Raps. I'm like, whoa. Next thing you know, phew, her rocket took off.
Superstar. All right, I want to do one more song. In addition to working at MTV and hosting the show, you're also continuing to be involved with music video production and directing stuff.
I directed a lot of videos.
Yourself.
Yeah. Well, that was a pretty...
You got 6 minutes
on that Jackson, this shit is real. Oh, man. Yeah. So I meet Nas, interviewing him on Your MTV Raps. Nas knows I've directed did some different videos.
Young Nas.
Young Prodigy, Illmatic, first album just dropped. And we talking, and a touching moment for me is when he tells me his dad took him to see Wild Style when he was 10. And it changed his life. And he's like, and now I'm sitting here with you now, man. This shit is wild. You know, in his super cool, laid back way.
Been writing rhymes since I was like 9 years old, dedicated to the music, to the heart, you know, especially when my pops took me and my man to see Wild Style, and we saw you in it, you know what I'm saying? Now I'm here doing an interview with you. That's real.
I was like, man, that's incredible. So we talking, and he asked me about some of the things I was doing, the music videos. Yo, that's you that made that. You made that too. You did this. Oh man, I'd love to work with you, man. You know, blah blah blah. He said, yo, and he hit me up, bang, right away. Like the next single was a song called One Love. And I went to work. It was such a genius concept. I mean, the whole structure of the song is he's writing letters to one of his homies that's locked up in prison. So the different verses are letters. I was like, man, this is incredible. So basically for me, and I love the best videos I directed were now, you go to my website, which is fab5freddy.com. I've got some of my favorite music videos that I directed, including first videos for Queen Latifah, first videos for Snoop Dogg, turned him into a dog. But the Nas video for One Love was a moment for me because we went to the Queens Bridge projects, which was still at the time the most crack-infested project in New York City, early 90s, when that scourge was still going on. And one of the things I was blessed to be able to do was get real homies off the street, see the ability to follow my direction, and with the right faces, right look and everything, and put them in position and help them get these characters right. And I was super happy with the way it turned out. Nas' mom was still living in those projects at the time, and I shot scenes in the apartment. And one of her best friends, there's a part in the rhyme when he says, I hate it when your mom's cries. I got his mom's best friend to do that scene, and we got like a fake tear to come out. And I just was narratively following what he put down in that rap, and I'm very pleased with the way it came out.
You are, just one of the most interesting, creative people that I've gotten the chance to speak to. Like, you touch culture in so many ways. Like,
thank you, man.
And to have the platform of something like Yo MTV Raps when you've already done all this stuff, I think there's a reason it resonated with people, and you resonated with people so much.
Thank
you did real stuff, and it came from a place of like, just, I care about art, and I want to make art, and I want to keep pushing forward. And it's fucking inspiring to anyone. So this book is incredible.
Thank you so much.
Well done. It's really, really was a joy to read. The story, it's you have too many stories. That's the problem with this book. It's like, I'm like, what?
Thank you so much, man.
It's out of control.
Like I said, it was a long time in the making. Wanted to get it done for a minute, and I'm so happy that we got it done, you know, and I'm just happy. Look, I've been waiting for an opportunity to share these stories. I didn't want to just like stick my chest out like, oh, by the way, I did this and I did that. I wanted to put it all in a proper context. Like, here's where I came from. Here's how these pieces came together. And that is really what makes, because I really wanted to be able to inspire the people that didn't go to like an expensive college, RISD or whatever, the people that just still want to create and figure out a way to navigate through the system. I'm hoping that inspires those folks as well as you people that are in college.
I'm telling you, it inspired me. So
thank you, man.
Thank you.
I
Appreciate
love
you.
the way you laugh when shit is funny. My man got the best laugh in the game. This shit is so crazy. I love
Thank
it.
you. Finally, someone appreciates my laugh.
No, it's like a living meme right here when he does a smile and shit.
Trackstar Podcast is a presentation of public opinion created by me, Jack Coyne, Kieran Coyne, and Henry Cornaros. Produced by Haley Sobel. Edited by Ryan Durgans. Theme and original composition by Kieran Coyne. Mixing by Devin Klein. Our agent is Joanna Orland at UTA. Thanks for listening. See you next Wednesday.